Welcome to the Air Combat Simulation Podcast, brought to you by DVR Productions. Together with content creators, mission builders, experts, and enthusiasts, we explore the comprehensive world of combat aircraft simulation.
Hello and welcome to episode 33 of the Air Combat Sim podcast. And today we have a special guest with us, Nicolas Dackard from Heatblur Simulations. Hi.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It's good to have you here. I'm Baltic Dragon and we're with Geode. I think he's the most first person in the Tomcat I know, so I'm happy to have him here to to take on that part of the interview.
That's not saying much. That is not saying much considering the fact that we've got people like Ward Carroll now in DCS pretty much full time. But yeah, it is great to be back.
So maybe let's start off with a very general question. So looking through the information about Heatblur, it's advertised as a Polish company, right? In a way.
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
Which makes me proud as a Pole.
Great to hear. No, we're de facto international, I would say, but we certainly have a more centered orbit around Poland in terms of I think now the majority of our staff are Polish, and my parents are Polish, and we're kind of registered in Poland, so it's definitely not a misnomer to say we're a Polish company at this point, I would say, but yeah, a little bit of a gray zone, I would say, for sure.
Yeah, everything with DCS, I guess, it's all international. But how many people are there? The whole team?
Honestly, I get asked this every now and again, and I always come up short with an accurate answer, but we're somewhere towards about 10 full-time staff at this point, maybe actually over since the past couple of weeks, because we've just brought some new people on board as well. And then I would say in the broader sense, in terms of like associates and contractors and other people, we're probably pushing 20, 25 maybe. So we're growing steadily, especially last year we grew quite rapidly. So in both in terms of, associates and also, but primarily I would say full-time staff. So yeah, we're just about 10 people in terms of full-time staff at this point.
Cool. And maybe tell us a little bit about yourself. So you said your parents are Polish, but you're Swedish, right?
Yeah, I'm born and raised in Sweden for 19 years, and then I moved to Poland for a couple of years. I worked a little bit in film, went to a film school in Warsaw, and gathered some experience there. But ever since I was about, I would say probably about 14 years old or 15 years old, I probably got involved with the flight simulation industry. Back in the day, it was FSX, and kind of built up a skill set from around there. And it just kind of evolved. I kind of took that seg into film for quite a while, and didn't do anything with flight simulation or even to some extent 3D artwork, and then kind of branched back into simulation, which obviously I've always loved. So it's been a bit of a interesting and quite dynamic journey from that perspective, and now I'm living in sunny Portugal, and who knows what the future brings. So that's pretty much it, I would say.
Is this why? I mean, you're well known as Heatblur for very good movies or trailers for your aircraft. That's also part of your love for the movie or cinematography.
Oh yeah, for sure. And always when we think about kind of what can we do, how can we announce something, or how can we do something a little bit special, or anything like that, that experience and that love and passion for movie making is integral to that whole process. And we're, I think not only do we try to make really perhaps good trailers and stuff like that, but we also try to think outside the box a little bit, and we have some, we have ideas on the table that I really want to execute that are super outside of the box, almost like crossover between film and what we're doing. So yeah, for sure, that really bleeds into what we do. But I would also say it bleeds into the products themselves, because there's things like, audio cues or immersion kind of things that you draw more from film and how you edit film and do visual effects and sound effects. So it's kind of like this multidisciplinary concoction that comes out of us, which I think makes us at least a little bit unique for sure.
So, on that note, are you going to be doing any more trailers in the near future for like some of the other stuff coming with, say, for example, the Tomcat? I know that we're still pretty much waiting for like the Iriaf version, and I'm not sure that we actually had any trailers that really highlighted the Forestall or anything like that. So, is that something that's on the table as well?
We did have a Forrestal trailer, so yeah, pretty much for everything major we do, we try to put something out there, and sometimes we don't, but for anything major we do try, and definitely for something like the early A, we'll do something. We have 2 upcoming campaigns for the F-14, free ones that are part of the module itself. So for anything like more major, we definitely will be doing more stuff, and of course for anything new, we'll be doing the full range of what we tend to do.
Nice, nice. Now, I know you probably saw the news that came out over the last couple of days there with Orbix announcing that they're with DCS. Now, considering the fact that Heatblur's got the Viggen, that's naturally the first thing that came to my mind when I saw that map. So I'm pretty sure everybody wants to know, are there going to be any more Swedish aircraft or, aircraft from around that area? I know that you had planned, what was it, the AI version of the Draken? But what about like a full fidelity one or, any of the other fighters in that area? Is that something that, might take advantage of the fact that we're getting this new map?
There, I would say there's certainly a long-term goal, I would say, of getting a full fidelity Draken out there. It is certainly a driving factor behind wanting to do the AI version of it. However, I would simply say that that's not us planting our flag or anything like that. We don't have, a license agreement or anything like that for it right now. We've got our hands quite full, but I love the Draken. I think it's such a beautiful and especially for us Swedes, quite an iconic aircraft, and I think we could certainly do it justice. And so it is a long-term goal or dream of mine to do it. So fingers crossed that we get there, and hopefully sooner or later. And if somebody else does it, then we are equally as happy, simply as Draken enthusiasts. So yeah, hopefully.
Speaking of other modules, I mean, there's a few aircraft that are always coming up as a kind of dream for the players, and one of them is Panavia Tornado. Anything about that as a possibility?
Yeah, we've thought about it several times actually. It's a very cool aircraft. We like it a lot. It doesn't really fit into our plans right now, but also perhaps in the future it would be super cool. It's one of those aircraft that it's very complex, both in terms of systems and the flight modeling. And anything swing wing is always harder to execute on the flight model side. That's just the reality of it. And then the Tornado is no slouch when it comes to systems complexity and figuring out how it actually works and all these kinds of things. So it's certainly the kind of project that isn't to be taken lightly, but it's been on our minds, quite frankly. But again, no concrete plans or anything, but it would be super cool for sure.
I welcome anything that's an addition to the Swing Wing Club. So if you do decide to do that, just know you've already got a customer right here.
Got it.
Yeah, don't listen to me. You'll get a customer, and whatever you produce probably with bulk Geode. So
Well, this is true too. Yeah. But speaking of like additional planes and so on, there is a question here that was asked. Basically, they wanted to know what the status was on the venerable A6E and the KA6 tanker as part of the F-14 wrap-up. Where do we stand as far as that goes now?
We're pretty much approaching art complete on the A6. The tricky thing for us has been that the A6 changed from a project where we weren't quite sure whether we would do a full fidelity version of it at the time, but now that has indeed been woven into the plan, so to speak. So, and the A6 is actually relegated to, I would not say the end of our roadmap, but it's towards the end. And the reason for that is that the A6 is an aircraft that has some very unique features and technologies that we need to develop beforehand. So that caused us to not quite step on the brake, but we weren't as quick as we were planning to be with finishing the artwork, essentially. So that's why it's been a little bit longer to get that wrapped up and finished. But we are approaching art complete at this point, so my hope is that sometime this year we will put it out there and it'll be available as an AI module in DCS. And if not, then early next year, something like that. Obviously, this year has been a little bit chaotic and rocky with several factors influencing. So that was our goal actually last year. But hopefully sooner rather than later we will get it in place and get everybody enjoying it. And building content with it already, it's an integral part of any kind of 80s 90s carrier deck. So we want to get it out there as soon as possible, even if only for our own benefit as well with our upcoming content and campaigns.
And just to confirm, we're looking at just the A6E model and the KA6, or are we talking about like a Prowler in addition to that, since that was also on a carrier around that time?
Unfortunately, we haven't even thought or even worked on doing the Prowler. So we're just doing the E and the KA for now. So, but obviously, since if you have a finished piece of complex artwork, it's a much smaller step to go to something like an EA. So so perhaps that is in the future, and especially if people the community at large would like it, then absolutely.
Yeah, seems to be a dedicated crowd there that's asking for EW type aircraft. So I really wouldn't be too surprised if we hear more from them soon.
Absolutely.
I'm in the forerunner of that crowd because I need it for the Raven one. Please do it.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but speaking about the carrier, there's also a question about the super carrier version of the Forrestal.
It's a tricky question to answer. Initially, no. Initially, we just wanted to do, like the Stennis featured version of the Forrestal. But, at the time there was no supercarrier, and now there is. And supercarrier is awesome. It's super immersive, and we use it a lot. We enjoy it. So there is a very strong will to get a supercarrier variant of the Forrestal done. We've had some discussions with our partners, and hopefully we will be able to move in that direction. That's basically all I can share, because there is both a technology component, I would call it, and a kind of how do we do it component to it, and those aren't perfectly clear just yet. So, but certainly I would simply say that there is a strong will to do a supercarrier version of the Forrestal.
Yeah, actually, it might be smart to wait a little bit, because we're going to get the taxi directors, we're going to get the ready room, etc. So maybe it would be easier to port it to Forrestal when it's all done on the ED side, I guess.
Exactly. And that's what I mentioned by the technology kind of component of figuring out how a supercarrier Forrestal would look and work, and it's a bit tricky to do it at a time where the supercarrier itself is not feature complete just yet. So yeah, but it's on our minds very frequently, certainly. So hopefully we get there for sure.
I'm trying to think what other famous Cold War jets, I guess either Gen 3 or Gen 4, that we're missing. We know that quite a few of them are being done. Are there any in particular that Heatblur has been thinking about, other than, of course, the obvious one that we're going to be talking about in a bit?
I guess, yes. The thing is, we're always thinking about what to do next, because DCS modules are a multi-year effort, and you're always kind of, if you're not thinking about what you're doing 4 years from now, then you're not quite doing your job in general. So certainly we're thinking about what is missing, what would make for a compelling kind of full experience, right? With the kind of aircraft that you would expect to be in a theater at a given time. So certainly, but then there's a long road between thinking about it and kind of daydreaming about it and it pen to paper, so to speak. So
Right.
yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. And there's even a question on here, is there a chance or willingness to do a full fidelity Su-27S down the road?
I don't know. I mean, I have a lot of experience developing a red aircraft in the MiG-21 with Leatherneck at the time. I like the Sukhoi 27. So again, it's the kind of thing that who knows? It's no concrete anything. Certainly not from us at this time. But if in a vacuum somebody goes, do you wanna, then the answer is usually yes. So so who knows again.
But then let's turn the question around a little bit and just imagine you'd get all the possible documentation, SMEs access, assistance, whatever, no restrictions for any aircraft. Which one would be your dream aircraft to develop and bring to DCS right now?
That's a really great question, and it's exceptionally hard to answer. I might be boring and say something like F-14D, something like that, because
Oh,
it would build on our love for the Tomcat, and it would be a very nice logical step forward in representing it in a sim form. So that would probably be my answer. Nothing too exotic, honestly, but I think it would just be really nice. It would offer a different take on the aircraft, I would say, and yeah, that would probably be my answer.
that's really the only answer you need. That's acceptable. I'm going to take that one.
Good to hear.
You have a new customer. No, but then to finish off, maybe on the general side of things, looking at DCS module development. Oh no, there are two questions. So that would be the first one. What would be the most challenging area that you look at? So like model graphics, systems integration, clickable cockpit. I don't know. What's the most difficult part of it all?
I would say that's a very hard question. I would say it's not one thing in isolation, actually. I would say it's putting it all together into a cohesive, polished, immersive, and enjoyable experience. It's a bit of a non-answer, I suppose, but that really is, for me, the thing that worries me most. Because I think a lot of developers, I think a lot of programmers and so on and engineers can create a very accurately recreated system, especially in isolation. But the most difficult thing is, I think at least, putting it into a kind of like a whole package, a thing that just feels good from start to finish, feels polished, feels enjoyable. And it just transports you into that cockpit. It just puts you there. And the funny thing is that it's not a lot of like major things that make that happen. It's the small things. It's the small details, the shakes or the vibrations or the sound cues or a multitude of things that just combine. And that combination is nothing you can quantify, I think. It's kind of like, why is a good song good kind of thing. And I think that's the hardest part, like that full experience and when you jump in the cockpit, you just feel it kind of. It's a bit of a perhaps very artsy answer, but it's it's the most honest one I think I can give you.
I think when you look at the Tomcat, at least, that's absolutely what you managed to achieve. There's a multitude of small things that you only notice after some time, or that they go together and they create this unique experience. I have to agree. As for the good song, Bell, I think you'll agree. So it has to be heavy metal, right?
Oh yeah, it's always metal. It always
Oh
has to
yeah,
be metal.
agreed.
And I mean, maybe the last one from the general part, because we got lots of questions from the community, and there's been a lot of feedback. And how we want to structure this is to ask you questions about different modules. So go then to probably start with Viggen, then go through Eurofighter, F-14, and then finish off on F-4. But before we do, there's one more question I want to ask: is whether you would ever consider dipping your toes into creating maps, and especially the Southeast Asia map, which is probably nicely linked with the F4.
It is. It's a tough question. The answer is unequivocally yes. The true answer is that it's been part of our plans at times, and then it's sometimes faded away a little bit for various reasons. But primarily where we've been as a company at the time, and we've done some stuff in the pro industry and these kinds of things. So. Certainly, the answer to that is an unequivocal yes. But again, nothing concrete to share, honestly. It's certainly up our wheelhouse. We have a lot of experience building, just virtual worlds, I guess you can call it, and environments, actually. So it's certainly up our wheelhouse, but our schedule is very packed right now, and it's primarily aircraft focused, actually. So nothing concrete to share, but yes, at some point we'll probably go down that route for sure.
Yeah, so let's move to Viggen maybe now, as there's only a few questions about it, and they're quite similar, all of them. So one question is about the Viggen skins and some issues it currently has, according to people asking a question, like with the few regimes of the flight model where it tends to overperform quite significantly, and some possible problems with damage model. I don't know. I've not flown the Viggen that much, so I'm not very versed in it.
Yeah,
But
sure, no worries.
what's your take on that?
Well, it's certainly a possibility. We actually I don't think it was this previous patch, but it was a patch before. We actually did a significant overhaul of the engine, actually. So we did do it primarily because the numbers weren't quite correct for the engine, but it was actually underperforming a couple of regimes, which is funny, I suppose. But if there's some kind of performance metric that is off, then certainly it's something that needs to be fixed. So that's out of the question to leave it hanging. We've seen a few damage model issues that you just mentioned, especially in multiplayer, and we don't know why they happen quite at this point. We've tried fixing them several times, but it's one of those where things happen and you can't quite nail it down. So we'll have to keep working on that. And we have quite a heavy push on new Viggen things coming in the next couple of patches to bring it out of EA. And so we'll be doing a significant amount of that work over the next weeks and months, actually. So the Viggen will see substantial updates in the near period here.
Does that also include the more skins for it?
It does. We are doing a full overhaul of, when we did the Viggen, DCS was still using an old lighting model, kind of like Blin Fong or so, specular based, and now it uses PBR, obviously. So we're doing a full overhaul of the Viggen's textures to take advantage of that BRDF model. So as part of that process, we're also doing more liveries and updating the paint kit, so it'll be far simpler to use this time around, and fixing some errors in the artwork while we're at it. So that's all woven into one big process. So the Viggen should see a substantial visual upgrade externally once we finish it. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, with the new color map, I'm sure Viggen will get a lot of extra love. Yeah, well, it belongs there.
Oh yeah, we're excited, definitely.
And the last question we have here, and that one is, I'll just read it out because it says, I wonder how the Viggen pre-order draw award of getting one's name on an F-14 skin is going.
We are gonna put it to bed before the Tomcat exits EA. Essentially, we're actually not finished with the Tomcat's liveries either at this point, even though there's quite a fair few in there. But we'll be doing some forms of dynamic modex numbers for the F-14, and once we have that complete, we'll be adding more liveries for the F-14 as well. So we'll be doing it as part of that process.
Great. So before we move to F-14, let's quickly stop at the Eurofighter, because we also have a few questions about it, and then the F-14 will be a bigger chunk probably. And I think that's a good question. What's the division of responsibilities between Heatblur and TrueGrid for the Eurofighter, and who's doing what, and how did it come to being the whole cooperation?
So it came into being just through getting in touch and discussing and getting to know each other essentially, and that's really how it evolved, or rather, it evolved from there. And as to who's doing what, I mean, Heatblur is essentially fully responsible for implementing the Eurofighter and creating it in DCS from the perspective of engineering and programming and integrating and creating artwork. And TrueGrit is responsible for enabling, I would say, the entire project in the sense of, providing expertise, interfacing with partners and figuring out feasibility, and providing information and understanding of the aircraft and how it works. And so it's quite a natural partnership and cooperation, and that's essentially, I would say, the areas of responsibility are quite clear because of that. And TrueGrit's also responsible for some of the modeling and the artwork. So a unique opportunity for us to actually cooperate on those things. It's been a unique process. So yeah, that's essentially it.
And what variant are we going to get? Which trench? I know which one is used for Eurofighter. So it's going to be a mix of 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we get this question a fair bit, and the funny thing is, there's actually no answer to it because what we're doing on the Eurofighter is quite rare for us, where we, for the Phantom, for the F-14, but especially for the Phantom and some of the aircraft that are very well documented, we kind of go, okay, we're doing exactly these blocks with these upgrades. For the Eurofighter, we're taking a slightly different approach because of the way the aircraft is in reality, and also the reality of recreating it in a simulator, a modern aircraft, is that we're saying, okay, so you can't really pick an exact version of the aircraft, even if you wanted to. Even on the flight line, they aren't quite the same. And even more so, we want to strike a balance between providing as much gameplay options as we can with what we're able to do realistically. And I don't mean realistically in terms of managing to execute it in terms of time. I mean in the sense of, do we have enough data to do it? Do we have enough understanding of that system to actually implement it correctly? And it's a bit of a balance. And so, we're doing a bit of, we jokingly refer to a Frankenstein Eurofighter. It's not quite as bad as that sounds, but certainly it's a bit of a mix of systems and components that any Eurofighter on the world could, in theory, have. And it's very realistic from that perspective. But whether you can find an exact aircraft on the flight line that will kind of reflect what we're doing, we don't know, actually. So it's a bit of an amalgamation of upgrades and snapshot in time, perhaps, of what would be realistic. So there is no true answer as to what exact version block upgrade or kind of version that we're doing, essentially.
I think it makes sense. I mean, probably I can imagine that you get SMEs and you get some documentation, and someone will come and say, "Well, I've flown it, but we have a newer version of this and that, so you can actually model it. I'll tell you how it's done." So yeah, and then it comes together. But that makes sense, and especially that most of the people doesn't have a clue how it should look, like in theory. So
Yeah, true.
so
That's true. But to be fair, we never we never try to lean on that because we've almost caught ourselves saying that sometimes, like, oh, nobody will ever know anyways. But on the other hand, we kind of then undermine our own kind of whole ethos or what we're trying to do. So yeah, it's true, and sometimes that is a protective effect to some degree. So that's great. But perhaps the way to put it is, it would bug us more than other people, and whatever bugs us is a complete no-go, essentially. So we definitely shy away from that. No, but I think we'll strike a good middle ground. I don't think we'll undermine what DCS is all about, and I don't, it's not about, like, oh, we can make the Eurofighter and it'll be an economic success at the expense of consistency across the platform and the enjoyment the community and customers get from spawning in and knowing that what they're doing is realistic. So hopefully we'll certainly tread that line very well.
You'll have to forgive me for not knowing, I guess, too much about the Eurofighter. Is that primarily going to be air to air or air to ground as well? And if air to ground, what are we looking at for munitions, like LGBs or GPS guided munitions and so on?
Both. The early access initial release will be air-to-air only, and again, that's a little bit unique for us. It'll be a far more bare-bones release than we've, quite frankly, ever done before. And then we'll go into the air-to-ground implementation and kind of add that through early access. For air-to-ground, you're looking at quite a, I would say, wide variety of weaponry, but certainly skewed towards precision guided weaponry overall. Including targeting pods and all kinds of fun stuff. So it'll certainly feel like a very modern air-to-ground experience for sure.
Nice. Going back kind of to what we were discussing before about music, someone's asking, will the Eurofighter have a music album like the Tomcat's Defender of the Fleet?
Yes, and so will the F4 Phantom.
That is music to yours.
Yeah, no, we're super happy. We're working with the great Jorge at Meteor again to compose some very fitting music for our aircraft, and perhaps it won't be a full length kind of album like we did for the F-14. It's looking like it, but we are again at the whims frequently of creative and artistic kind of inspiration. So there are no guarantees, and you don't want to put more songs on just because. So, but yes, certainly some songs are done already. So yeah, it's looking good, and we're super excited about it. It's one of those again kind of crossover things like I mentioned before, where it's just because we're doing flight sims doesn't mean it can't be kind of a artistic endeavor, pulling in different disciplines and creating a full package.
Yeah, that definitely adds to the experience. So I really appreciate it anyway.
Cool. Glad to hear.
All right, I think that moves us to the Tomcat questions and talking more about the F-14. And yeah, I think the main field should go through Bill on this one.
Well, all right. Actually, the first question that's on the list for the F-14 is something that I've always wanted to know as well. They'd like to know how you did the sound for the F-14. Is it from archives, or did they get an actual F-14 to record it from? I think they're probably talking more about like the engine noises.
Yeah.
'Cause, I mean, obviously, the clicks and switches and whatever, you can do that with a museum bird, right?
Yes. The exterior are a bit of a mix. Some of them are synthesized, but most of them are actually archival sounds from, I'm not sure who did it, but somebody recorded a Tomcat with very high quality mics back in the day. And they recorded everything actually from landing gear extension sounds to canopy opening and closing sounds to all kinds of fun stuff. So we had a library, surprisingly, because the F-14 had been, has been out of service for quite a while. We had a library that we could use, and the engine sounds were included. So obviously, for a flight sim, you need to do some work to get it all in place. So we've obviously been working on them, and we've synthesized a couple of things to fill out the gaps. But they are pretty much authentic. And funnily enough, we've done a couple of sound overhauls where people have been unhappy, and it doesn't sound like the Tomcat. And then we've removed some of the more archival, authentic stuff that we had in there, and used slightly more synthesized sounds. And the community writ large has been happier about it. So sometimes the impression, and again, it's the same in film and sound effects in general. Sometimes the impression you get from a sound is different from how the raw, isolated one is. So that's certainly a learning experience to some extent as well. The interior sounds are actually a mix, because some of the sounds, like the throttle clickety clack sounds when you move them back and forth, and when you open the cover for the wing sweep, these kinds of things, they are fully authentic. So those are recorded in a museum aircraft. But then some of the more generic ones, actually, like the flip switches and stuff, some of them are just generic sounds that we've either foleyed ourselves or we've purchased or created in some other way. So it's certainly a mix, but the most important ones I would say in the cockpit are authentic, actually. So, and that's again a process we've now repeated with the Phantom, and we'll be repeating it as much as we can with future aircraft. So, sounds are very, very important for us in that respect.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. I was just thinking about that throttle click in particular, especially when I'm in the B model on one of the catapults. And listening for that click, just so I don't go into afterburner, is
Yeah.
crucial for me. So thank you. I'm really glad that you pay a lot of attention to the sound.
Yeah.
In addition to that question that they had asked, they wanted us to tell you that the F-14 is the best sim experience I've ever had.
Oh, thank you very
And
much.
that's not me saying it, even though I do agree with their sentiment. All right,
Appreciate it.
but moving on though. What would you say would be the time frame for some of the other F-14 items? For example, we had heard talk about the Iranian version, and of course the TARP spot. I think that's probably the thing that I get asked the most. When are we getting a TARP spot?
It's so essentially the Iranian version of the F-14 gets unlocked once we've completed the early A of the F-14A. And essentially what we're working on right now for that is the kind of tone generator for the ALR-45. We've been working on it for a while, but it's quite a tricky thing to put together. And we're kind of doing it two tracks. So we're doing it both, obviously, for the Phantom and the F-14. Because they share that characteristic in their RWRs. So we're working on that right now, and hopefully towards late summer or somewhere in early fall, we'll have the early A done, and that will then unlock the Iranian version, which we're not quite sure what feature set it'll have in terms of reflecting the real Iranian F-14, because obviously the chin pod is not the same, and there's a few other bits and pieces like fuel pylons and those kinds of things, but we will do it in some way or fashion. So it'll essentially unlock that. So as soon as we push out that early F-14A, which is part of the early access kind of release criteria, then we can move on to the Iranian Tomcat and represent that. In terms of other features, I mean, right now we're working on finishing up the in-cockpit pilot, which is a little bit more of an involved process for us this time around because we're trying to do some novel features for that, essentially. And we're actually modeling the tarps right now in the past couple of days. So I think we will have that out quite soon. Again, the tarp spot for us is something that is more of simply a visual feature in terms of you can hang it, maybe there's some small gameplay element to it, but essentially it's a bit tricky to do anything more involved with the tarp spot in DCS. Beyond that, we're working on, I would say, a fair few features that are simply perhaps making something existing better. We're going to be working on some new afterburner effects pretty soon, updating the UI artwork. There's a few things that need to be finished or improved, and before we consider ourselves to be more satisfied with the state of the aircraft. And we'll also be doing quite large overhauls and improvements to some systems. Specifically, we'll be doing pretty substantial improvements to, for example, hydraulics and these kinds of things. And there's some more things beyond that are unannounced at this point that we'll be doing to the Tomcat. So yeah, we're spending a lot of time on it, and hopefully we'll get the remaining features squared away as quickly as possible so that we can move on to, just improving them or polishing the product before we exit EA.
That sounds like a plan to me. There are a couple of questions that are just kind of bundled together here. One is there a chance to change the lights on the Tomcat? It says the beacon lights were slow pulsing, and I guess they're not slow pulsing. right now. I've never paid much attention. I'm in VR. I'm inside the birds, so I have no idea what they were
Yeah.
talking about with that. But that is the question that was asked.
Yeah, possibly. If there's an inaccuracy there, then we should certainly fix that. And there are obviously some limitations to what we can do in the DCS engine. Actually, not the DCS engine specifically, just any graphical engine in gaming in general, because there are some lighting effects that are simply difficult to recreate, both on a monitor and VR. Due to how they work. So some of them are sometimes a little bit simplified, but any inaccuracies that are there should be changed, fixed, and improved. So absolutely. There's I know that some of our squadron guys, as testers and SMEs, they kind of say they're a bit too dim, like the lights are a bit too dim still, and these kinds of things. So we'll certainly be improving those things just to make the experience better overall, and that's very important.
I could honestly say that's probably the one thing that I forget the most is turning on the lights, because usually I'm operating from the carrier, and I don't even think you're really supposed to have your lights on around the carrier, unless, of course, you're taking off at night, I think. I don't know. Anyway, the other question that comes with that, well, actually, I think it's more of a suggestion. Somebody's asking if you can make the refueling probe door an on or off clickable option.
We've just implemented it as part of the livery system, but what we'll be doing is we just had a discussion today about it. I think we ended up determining that we'll probably do it through the radio menu. So you'll just have a radio option where you can remove the refueling probe door on the ground, and that's probably what we'll do for now. So that will be removable in an easier way that isn't tied to your livery or to the mission editor.
That does make sense. Yeah, I think that would be something that would probably fall under the ground crew while they're, hooking everything up or whatever. So that sounds
Yeah.
like a good idea. Um, let's see. There is another question related to, AIM 54. Are there any changes in general that that are coming for the AIM 54, or is that more of an ED thing?
No, we've been doing AIM-54 changes pretty much every patch over the past few months, and that effort has really been focused on improving the guidance of the missile, which has been lacking in the past, and especially once we adjusted some of the aero parameters to more accurately reflect the real missile. Then this poor guidance was causing significant issues in just recreating real life performance of the AIM-54. So we've really been shipping changes on that for the past several months, and we have quite a few changes still lined up on it. Actually, we have some we're going to try and make recreate more of the specifics of the AIM-54C versus the A's. We are going to try and model some of the, how should I call them, characteristics or limitations of the A versus the C. So there are a few things that we'll be adding over the next couple of patches, and there will be a few changes, but overall, I wouldn't say that the missile will perform or not underperform in there won't be any huge changes really to how it feels to utilize the missile, at least not any expected ones at this moment. So there will be some intricacies and characteristics and just a slightly more accurate depiction, but it's starting to slot into where it needs to be in terms of just general effectiveness. Yeah, the eagle-eyed will see plenty of changes, both good and bad, and but overall it'll feel pretty similar to what it does like today.
Cool. If I may ask now, I mean, from my point of view, you mentioned the campaigns, 3 campaigns coming for the Tomcat, and I think your bird has now the biggest number of interesting campaigns out there. And big shout out to Reflected, who is going to release a new one on the Speed and Angels, he's doing with Paco.
Indeed, looking great.
It's going to be amazing, even with the real characters from his movie doing the voiceovers for it. But just wanted to ask you if you could tell us a bit more about the 2 free campaigns coming up for the F-14.
Sure. Oh gosh, now I wish Alex Iron Mike was here with us, so I don't butcher his work. I believe, if I remember correct, so one campaign is a continuation of the one that's currently released for the F-14B, as that small spoiler alert, ends on a little bit of a cliffhanger. So that's a full continuation of that campaign, essentially. Um, and then the second campaign is for the A. And that campaign is set, if I remember correctly now, in the Persian Gulf on the Forrestal class. So it's a little bit of a different experience. And that campaign is centered very much around what was happening around that time in that theater. And so it takes that and then it embellishes perhaps a little bit or adds some dramatic elements like we like to have in our missions and campaigns, and kind of makes it an enjoyable experience. So both of those campaigns are under active development simultaneously right now, and hopefully we'll have the first one of them released quite soon. So it's going to be fun and exciting, and just I guess just another part in us trying to make sure the value for money and the modules just feel like a content rich, enjoyable experience from start to finish.
Yeah, looking forward to that. It's going to be, I mean, I'm still trying to get into the F-14 also because of our campaign with Much that's coming up, maybe probably next year. But yeah,
Looking forward to it.
yeah, it's gonna be fun. I mean, yeah, it's definitely fun. Just a lot to learn and very little time, as always.
That's how it is, unfortunately.
That's a fact of life right there. Alright. What about our favorite Rio? What kind of updates are we looking at for our absolute favorite Rio? And of course, his counterpart, our absolute favorite AI pilot.
Um, Difficult question to answer, not because there isn't stuff coming or we're not going to be working very much in that kind of on those features, but it depends on a little bit because we're working on the Phantom right now, so it depends a little bit on what happens there, and we have some pretty grand plans in those in that respect. So it's very difficult to speak about specifics, but we think Jester's quite intelligent right now, but we want to make him wise, essentially. And that is a process that's not easy to do. And so we are changing our approach a little bit, I would say, and experimenting more right now. And so we'll see how that experimentation goes and how, let's call it, the next evolution of Jester as it is in the Phantom will turn out, and what lessons we learn there and how we will apply them across our products essentially. And we see Jester and Iceman actually as long-term investments and projects, especially if you look at the A6 further down the line, and any two-seat aircraft where you do need competent AI to fly with you. So I think it's a cornerstone of our company in general, and it will be in the future. And so we have quite grand plans there, and we're spending a lot of time working on AI technology at Heatblur. A bunch of that will feed back into the Tomcat. So apologies for not offering any specifics, but we will certainly disagree at times about some of the complaints people have about Jester, but on the other hand, we are cognizant of many of his flaws, and we're very motivated for all comments to the type of like, I don't like flying with Jester because this or that, to disappear entirely. That would mean that our job is done. We've done it. We've made a perfect backseater AI. And so until those comments are basically fully or almost gone, then we won't quite rest. So we'll be working on it for sure.
I've never quite understood that, to be honest with you, because I actually do enjoy Jester. The only thing that I wish we had a female alternative to Jester as well. So, we have female Rio or a female pilot in the front. But that's just me.
We've got so many ideas about what we could, those kinds of things as well, like, make Jester more varied, or can't we have a different Jester voice or something, and unfortunately that's rooted in our design choice and artistic choice and kind of, I guess, kind of acting choice of using a specific actor, and the way we record gesture lines is, live. We go flying, and then we record voice lines, and then we put them in so they sound as authentic and kind of immersive as we possibly can get them. And maybe if we went down the road of using a voice synthesizer or something like that, we would I think by this point we would have several variations of voices or Rios available. But unfortunately, the gigantic voice library that we've assembled and will continue adding to precludes some of that flexibility there. So it's unfortunate, but it's a design choice we're quite comfortable with. I don't think we made a bad one, but unfortunately, it means that we can't. It would be great to do it, but we simply can't. It'll be really hard, unfortunately.
No, don't go the synthetic voice way. It's absolutely that's not a good choice. But
No.
and finishing off on that, I've been asking myself a question whether the Iceman will be one day able to fly the whole mission from start to end, so the player could just focus on the Rio sit for the whole duration of the mission.
That is generally our goal, yes. So Iceman is something that really was a bit of a bonus in the F-14. At first we didn't plan to have anything at all. And then what kind of happened was that we took the autopilot system and we wrangled it into being kind of, a pilot, right? So really what's happening, and it's still happening in the F-14, is really that Iceman is kind of an extension of the Rio's hands into the autopilot controls, but in a bit of a convoluted way, essentially. But our long-term goal is, and this is not quite a promise, but it's something that I want us to do, is to create a general pilot AI, essentially, that we will use across our multi-crew aircraft, where, it'll be much more like a, dedicated pilot AI that can do all kinds of things and can land and take off and just, as you say, run a mission, start to finish, essentially. And again, it's not a promise, but I think it would simply be a natural feature for our aircraft. You could be the BN in the A6E and do your thing across the whole mission, or be the Wizzo in the Phantom and not touch the pilot seat. That would be the ultimate goal. So hopefully we get there. It's a big feature and a big task to do, but I think it would fit so naturally.
All right, so the last question that we have, at least regarding the Tomcat, isn't necessarily about the features and modules. It's actually a question that reads, what is the estimated man hours put on the development of the F-14 thus far?
Oh gosh. How many hours in a year? I don't even remember.
I didn't come here to math. I have no idea.
24, I don't even know. Yeah, 9,000 hours. What will it be? I don't know. I'll bring up my calculator, actually. Let's see. I don't know.
You could probably just make it easier
over
on
100.
yourself.
It's certainly over 100,000, I would say. It's several man years for sure combined. I think we had, I think about 3, including myself, 4 full-time art staff building the artwork for the aircraft for over a year. Several full-time engineers working on the aircraft for several years. So you're looking at many thousands of man hours combined. It's quite the investment, certainly.
Well, it definitely shows. I've got to give you props on that one.
Thank you.
All right, so let's switch gears to the new kid on the block,
Sure thing.
figuratively speaking. First question we have regarding the F4 Phantom, aside from the obvious, when is it coming? Because you can just say 2 more weeks and that'll suffice for that. We'd actually love to hear some overall insight on the F4 development. Like, what can we expect as far as the capability of it, or, the product, what versions, whatever, when it ultimately launches?
Yeah, so we are doing 2 versions of the Phantom, one with a DMAS upgrade and one without, essentially. And so for EA, what we're doing is on initial release is we'll release it without, we'll release the version without DMAS. So that's what will be available on release. We are simply trying to mirror, really, I would say, the F-14 launch, which I think was quite complete in terms of how the product feels to fly and use and enjoy on release day. That said, it's perhaps it's a bit of a smaller and simpler aircraft in some respects. So, just in some respects, though, I would note. So, perhaps we'll even get to a higher state of completion. There are, again, some complexities involved in, some would think that, okay, we've built the Tomcat, so building the Phantom is, copy over Jester, copy over this, and boom, those things will be one-to-one identical. But as I mentioned before, we're not quite doing that with some of the features like Jester. We're really doing a Jester V2, which is completely separate from what we've done in the F-14 for now, except some of the components like the voice lines and so on. So there are some things which might even be worse off than the Tomcat, and ironically, the things that are already present in the Tomcat that people would think we would be able to copy over. It's a bit unclear still, quite frankly, but our goal is always to make it as a complete experience as we possibly can on day one. We're not big fans of leaving big chunks out or presenting an unpolished experience. I think you only get one first impression, and if that first impression is poor, then you've torpedoed yourself for the entire lifetime of the product, quite frankly. So we're working hard to get it where it needs to be.
Yeah, that certainly makes a lot of sense. So just to kind of clarify a little there, when it comes to the actual F4 early access, are we looking at getting both variants at that time, or are we getting one, and then how long after are we going to expect the second? Kind of like the way the Tomcat rolled out?
No, I think it won't actually be like the Tomcat at all, actually. So we will be keeping the pace of development that we're keeping right now in terms of, almost a full team being dedicated to the Phantom, essentially. And so we'll be working very, very hard to get the DMAS variant out as quickly as we possibly can. It's something that we decided once we took on this new generation of Heatblur aircraft, is that we don't want extended EA periods anymore. And we've said that before, but there's been certainly other things that have come in the way, or new developments or new partnerships that have taken away a little bit of focus and this and that. But we, it's a lesson learned time and time again that we want to get it done as quickly as possible. It feels better for us. It feels better for the community to have a full, complete product. And so I don't expect it to be anywhere close to a length of time like the Tomcat. It should be far, far quicker. And if we don't hit that goal, then we failed in some significant way. And I hope, and I'll be working very hard to make sure that does not happen.
That's really all you can ask. Now, would you say that a lot of the lessons that you've learned from the Tomcat are greatly fueling what you're doing with the F4?
Yeah, sure. Actually, well, sometimes the funny thing is, I've said this a few times to people privately, is like, sometimes it feels like we're an autopilot because you get the very, very strong sense of we've been here before and we know where we're going, and there's not many unknowns essentially. So yeah, it's very much like, you've done it once, and we know, we've learned the lessons, and we know what to do, and we know where we're going. So we didn't have that feeling with the Tomcat at all, because there were a lot of unknowns about, can we get multi-crew working as solidly as we have? Can we get Jester working? Is that even will it be horrible? Will it be good? There were a lot of unknowns in terms of how the end product will actually end up being. So with the Phantom, a lot of that has been taken away, and we feel we've learned how to execute something like this, and that's very helpful, I think. Yeah.
And I imagine that you have like all your SMEs and everyone on task. How are they reacted so far to what's been done, or have they even been involved?
They certainly have. I think they've reacted well as they can, given the early builds that they've been flying. I think we'll get a much better sense of how close we've come. Once the product is essentially complete, because unfortunately it's imagine something like an exponential curve. Unfortunately, almost all the way until you release, there's always something major missing, or some immersive element missing, or some detail missing that kind of mars the whole experience. So until the whole thing is put together and it really feels solid and polished, until that happens, you don't really get the full extent of how close have we gotten? Did we do a good job? So early feedback is great. We love it, but unfortunately, the nature of game development in general means that unless you have that ability to look beyond obvious issues, which not a lot of people have, then you tend to have a bit of a wonky time with the feedback.
Yes, I like to say subject to change.
Yeah.
Now, there is a question that's being asked by somebody who I guess is interested in doing a home cockpit. They want to know if Heatblur Simulations is going to release the 3D scans and/or dimensions for the F4 Phantom cockpit for those of them who would like to build.
Yeah, I think we'll do what we did for the F-14, which was release some basic models based off of the cockpit that we've built, so that people can get those major dimensions, and we'll probably describe our error margins in terms of how accurate it is to the real thing, because we generally at the end of a project, once we've finished all the modeling, we do tend to measure that and check, okay, so we got within X amount of millimeters, and to expect that. So yeah, we love supporting home builders. We love seeing the Tomcat cockpit home builders coming up with their beautiful home cockpits and kind of gauges and displays that they're putting together. So it's great. So yeah, I can make a solid promise on the fact that we will release what we can to support that community.
Well, there you go, home cockpit builders. You are covered.
Yeah, and speaking of which, what's your build? I mean, you have a home cockpit, or what do you use as a home test, Nicolas?
I have a VKB F-14 stick on my desk here, and I have a Thrustmaster Warthog throttle on my left-hand side here, which I've actually borrowed. I don't have a throttle of my own at this moment since my move, and I've got some Cytec pedals under the table here. But so my setup is exceptionally modest, and I have a big 55-inch TV here in front of me, using as a monitor. So it's I would say quite modest in comparison to even most DCS simmers, I would say, to some extent. So yeah, unfortunately reflective of the fact that we don't get to fly and enjoy our products as much as I'd like. So the joystick gathers much more dust than one would hope.
I was going to say, you got to at least have VR to,
fly
the Tomcat and Viggen in VR.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Of course. I have a Rift S here and a CV1 in the box here. No, that's certainly I would not miss it for the world. And that's something I completely stay away from trying our aircraft in VR until all of the artwork is finished, because I really enjoy that first moment where you strap on the headset and you can kind of see it in 3D. So I'm looking forward to that moment. It hasn't happened yet, so I'm gonna enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, also for me, I mean, I just cannot fly without the VR anymore, and it's kind of getting difficult when you try to test your campaigns or missions and then take notes what to change or whatnot. It's a bit tricky, but yeah.
Good problem to have for sure.
So you will start with the F4E, which is not the Navy one, so it's going to be ground-based one, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And then, so are there any plans to then move to the Navy one, which is basically, I mean, used a lot in Vietnam and other places?
Yes, absolutely. As soon as we finish the E, and that includes, of course, all the features that need to happen as part of exiting EA, we are going to be working on the Navy variant. So the Navy Phantoms are, just as important as the USAF ones, or perhaps even more so to some extent, and at least in some years. So, unequivocal, yes, we will be doing Navy Phantoms.
What about things like early T-pods and stuff like that, or some of the weapons that were, I guess, made famous in Vietnam, let's say?
Yeah, so we'll be doing I always mix up their names. We'll be doing the Pave Spike and the Pave Tack, I think they're called. I think I'm right on the Pave Spike. I'm sorry, I always forget because there's a few more of those. So both of those pods we'll be doing both. The on EA you'll only have the one. I believe that's the Spike. Don't quote me on it. I might be wrong again. And so, yeah, I mean, those early T-pods will be an interesting experience because they're not quite like the modern ones. They can't really auto-track stuff, or some of them at least. So yeah, I think it'll be a slightly different experience, and simmers will get a chance to experience the early days of targeting pods and how that looked and performed, and the challenges it kind of brought with it, and then compare to how it evolved and how you can utilize it in the Hornet and the Strike Eagle and all these other more modern aircraft that are available or coming to DCS. So yeah, big part of the product, and it's going to be a lot of fun to implement and see people use.
If I'm not mistaken, even before that, there were these handheld laser designators or something for the first laser-guided bombs. Were they used on F-4s already?
Good question. I'm not sure, but it's not something that we've planned for now, at least. But it's an interesting. It reminds me of interesting stories of Tomcat pilots and Rios using rifle scopes and that kind of thing, which we also really like and would kind of want to do in some way. So if it's a thing, maybe we can take a look and do something.
What about the possibility of branching out to other variants like the RF-4 Wild Weasel?
No plans, honestly. Both are certainly very interesting, but especially the Wild Weasel G, we would, as enthusiasts, we would really like to do it, but we kind of did say that to ourselves, that it, we would have to create so much novel functionality in DCS and created this whole EM environment to, make it a more realistic, experience, that it, doesn't really match the amount of demand from the community in general for it. I know there's a lot of, CAD people and DAD people, but yeah, it's a lot of work, and I don't think we can realistically get there. At least that's our opinion right now. But maybe that'll change, and see where we go. We have plans for the Navy variants, and perhaps we'll even do something beyond that. We'll see. But right now, nothing too concrete.
Yeah, I guess it's a difficult question with so many different variants and so many operators, all of them using different kinds of stuff on their aircraft. It must be difficult, but that brings us back probably to some kind of a Frankenstein thing, or you will probably
Yeah.
try to have different variants, but then you have to have quite a few actually for players.
Exactly, and it begs the question sometimes. How much do you gain from making another variant? Do players gain a lot by having an F with a removed fuel tank and a different RWR, and a few other tiny different? Probably not. Probably if you stick a German livery on an E, you get 99.9% the exact same experience essentially. So sometimes it's great to have variants and stuff, but you can pile on a lot of project complexity for very little gain. And even with the Tomcat, we're seeing that, with the Iranian versions and the early A and so on, it's quite complex to branch the product in so many ways and maintain it all and implement it appropriately. So we probably moving forward, we'll actually be more conservative with variants, and pick ones which either offer a dramatic difference in capability and offer a different experience, or or simply limit the amount of variants and kind of represent them at least in some way visually, so people can enjoy, a piece of their country's, aircraft, in this case Phantom history.
But you know that with the Phantom out, you will need to do the Vietnam map, right? Just saying.
Yes,
Yeah, absolutely.
certainly. I think I will make one comment on these kinds of things. Is like the funny thing is, sometimes it can be forgotten by the community, but the things that the community wants, the developers of flight sims also want, essentially. So all the great stuff like dynamic campaign, and we all grew up, or some of the older ones of us developed these older sims with dynamic campaigns and all the fun stuff, and the younger ones like myself, we grew up playing them. So yeah, I hear you. Everybody hears you. It's a necessity. So I think the community and developers are in tune more often than one might expect.
Either that or we'll have to start making more memes in the community just to kind of press the issue and aim them towards ED, I guess. The one question that kind of jumped out at me here, as we're kind of wrapping up all the questions here, how did the F4 migrate from being something that way back in the day Belsom Tech was supposedly working on to something that Heatblur is working on? Is there a story? Is it related?
I don't think there's quite a story. We pitched a Phantom way back. I don't know even what year it was. It was certainly, after the Tomcat had begun development, and the Phantom was always. I love the Phantom, so it was certainly something I would love to take on. So being able to do it is just. It just puts a smile on my face, when I think about it. But at the time, it wasn't quite available, and it's been many years since then. We've launched the Tomcat, and it just so happened that we had an opportunity to re-engage that discussion, and we've ended up where we are. So there's not quite any story except that I'm very pleased with getting the opportunity, and grateful for being a part of this community, and just DCS in general, and being able to put our mark on it, and build a Phantom for people to enjoy. So yeah, that's pretty much all I know. And so yeah, so hopefully we won't squander the opportunity. To put it ominously.
I'm assuming we're going to get some awesome campaigns to go along with it, just like previous modules, shall we say?
Certainly. Again, like just sometimes people who don't know about DCS, they kind of ask me, "Oh, so you're just making one plane?" And I kind of try to explain to them that not really. What we're actually doing is, like, imagine you have a video game titled F4E Phantom, kind of. It's a full experience. It's like if you buy any other game, you get content, single player campaigns, you get all kinds of stuff that's your gameplay, right? So just creating the aircraft and just throwing it out there and just being like, well, there it is. That's not really a full product, essentially. So yes, there will be campaigns, single missions, as much as we can do. I'm not quite sure yet what the final list will look like or what we'll have on EA in terms of content, but in no way is it gonna diverge from what we've done before.
And I know some of the third-party developers are already preparing themselves or gearing up for a campaign. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of extra content coming out as well.
Awesome. We love that. We love that. So looking forward to it greatly.
Okay, I think we've covered most of the questions that we had and that the people that sent them to us had. There's one more question that we wanted to wrap up with, coming from a good friend, Sedel. He's also a developer of campaigns. And that question, it's a very tough one. So we're ready?
I'm ready.
Would you rather fight a horse-sized duck or 50 duck-sized horses?
I'll go for the 50 duck-sized horses.
I
They're
think I choose the same.
perfect kicking height. Perfect kicking height.
That's probably the easiest answer that we've gotten all day. I love it. And of course, I can't let the entire episode go by without asking you, on behalf of Sergio, when are you going to make him a helicopter?
Oh gosh, good question. When hell freezes up? No, I don't know.
Be very careful.
Yeah,
Be very careful.
yeah.
You live in his country now.
There's a dinner date getting struck from the calendar as I speak, probably.
Probably.
No, I don't know. There's helicopters that would be super cool to do. It's just a matter of when and can we and does it fit into the schedule and all sorts of fun questions like that essentially. So
Black
boring
Hawk,
business ones
Black
actually
Hawk.
wrapped into Black Hawk, yeah. No. It's not like we're fixed wing, Puritans, purists. Variety is the spice of life. So
I'm just going to say it from now, do not encourage him. If you encourage him, it's over. He'll be over your house every day with like blueprints and schematics about what helicopter he wants. No,
Oh, that sounds good.
don't even go down that road.
No worries. I'm gonna bring him little. I don't know. We'll go for that dinner, and I'll bring some prints of some helicopters or something, just to, stir the conversation, and then it'll all go downhill from there.
All right, on your own head be it.
Well, thank you very much for taking time and for this good and fun conversation. And hope to see you again at some point in the future when you have the F4 out, maybe Eurofighter and some other things in the pipeline we can talk about. And thanks a lot. It's been good fun.
Thank you so much, guys. Appreciate it, and glad to get the opportunity to be here and speak to you guys. Appreciate it.
Indeed, keep doing what you do. I will tell you, you've done an absolutely amazing job, especially with my favorite Tomcat. I can't get enough of that bird. Can't get enough of that bird.
It's gonna get better. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Air Combat Sim. Don't forget to subscribe or tell a friend about it. You have a question, idea for an episode, or a special guest you'd like us to invite? Feel free to reach out on Facebook, Discord, or via email. Air Combat Sim was brought to you by BVR Productions.